Choosing your career path is probably the hardest thing to do growing up. It's something you don't really think about in your later years in high school. I think as a kid, I was introduced into my career path as an engineer through just simply playing with Legos. I remember I saw like a cartoon clip of the Pink Panther building a house out of bricks and cement, and I thought, wow, that looked pretty cool. And then my dad said to me, "Oh, do you want to be a civil engineer?" And I was like, "What's that?" And I guess he thought that it was like physically building the buildings. I don't know if he understood the firm like grasp of what that actually entailed. But he just pointed at the cartoon and said, "Yeah, it's that." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure, why not, yeah." So fast forward to today, I am a civil engineer. I graduated with a degree in civil engineering. I feel like at the end of the day, this was the best decision for me, and I am enjoying my career right now. But man, leading up to it was lots of like uncertainty and reconsiderations. For starters, I don't think I really have to say this, but engineering school is really, really hard. Growing up in middle school and high school, maybe even back in, I feel like I struggled a bit in elementary, but in middle school and high school, I never really had a problem with math. It was definitely one of the easier subjects for me. It wasn't until, I want to say, senior year of high school is when things were starting to ramp up, because that's when things were getting into college level difficulty. I had this calculus class in A period, which is basically, if you guys aren't familiar with A period, it's a 7 a.m. class, which is outside of the ordinary hours for high school students. Typically, high school students go to school from 8:20 or 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So having a college level calculus class early in the morning, where I'm still struggling to stay awake, was really not the best setup for me as a student pursuing engineering. I remember feeling really, really sad when I got bad test results from my calculus exams, or when I struggled to understand some of the questions in the homework problems. I was growing up with the mindset that I was going to pursue civil engineering since I was young because of what my dad encouraged me to do, just from watching the cartoon and playing with Legos. So all those years leading up to 12th grade, I thought, wow, this is going to work out for me. I know what I'm going to do. And then when that hit me, when I actually had to study and struggle with the material, was when I was hit with the reality like, okay, this isn't all that easy. And as that course went on, I started to think, is engineering even right for me? And this struggle with math kind of continued on into community college, I'd say. Math honestly never became easier after that. I remember watching just like motivational videos on, grades not defining you, or is engineering, the day-to-day life as an engineer, is what you do as an engineer, is it reflected in the studies that you do? Like, are you going to use the material that you're studying on a daily basis as an engineer? And answers ranged and varied from person to person. Some of those videos I'm trying to look up back now, I don't think they're up anymore. I guess they took them down, or I guess the person that uploaded them feels guilty of it. I'm not sure. But I'm going to speak from my experience and say that when you're trying to decide on your career path, definitely look into what they do on a day-to-day basis. Don't try to chase a career path based on if something is easy study-wise, or if the journey getting there is easy. I guess it could be factored in if you're tight on your budget and you don't have a lot of time to spend on something that may or may not work out. I guess that's something to consider because, if it's really, really hard and time-consuming, and you have a family to attend to, or you have kids to feed, then definitely, yeah, you're kind of limited in what you can do and what you can pursue. But as far as, if you have time on your side, you're young, and you're typically in that college age range of, 18 to 23 years old, be sure that you're really well aware of what graduates with your degree do on a day-to-day basis. Specifically, if you have an idea of where you want to work, what those people with those degrees do in that specific workplace that you're wanting to work in. Because in my day-to-day life, as an engineer, personally, I've grown to really like the work that I do. I feel like there's lots of growing that I've been doing in my career. But it goes without saying that 90% of what I learned, actually, I want to say 95% of what I've learned in school is not really used at all in the workforce. This might be me just talking out of my butt. The story might be different from everyone else. But I have a hunch that the stuff that they put you through for engineering school is kind of just a test to see how much of a hard worker you are. Because besides from the basic algebra you learn in middle school or high school, scaling drawings and taking measurements, I don't use calculus or differential equations or derivatives in my day-to-day life as an engineer. And it's crazy, especially looking in the career path that I took. I remember looking at a couple of videos where, I'm going to try throwing the video up on here right now, but it was basically someone covering the day-to-day life of a civil engineer. And even after watching that video, I had no clue what he did. I was so confused. I don't know if it's engineers specifically, but it felt like they were keeping it intentionally vague as to what they actually did on a day-to-day basis. And maybe that's because there was so much that they did that they themselves didn't know what to primarily say that they did or what they focused on. Because, yes, in a general sense, civil engineering is very broad. There's like structural you can go into, there's geotechnical, water resources, transportation. And the video I watched, I think it just said civil engineering, and it was so hard to understand what he was saying. And to be honest, I kind of worked with the mentality, and I don't recommend you do this. Just saying that, dear God, I hope I like my job. In the end, it worked out because I feel really fulfilled at where I am right now. I feel like I'm making a difference in the place that I live in and the place that I work at. Something that I wish that was offered in my school growing up was a program where you go around and kind of just see what different workers do on a day-to-day basis. Essentially just shadowing their, regular life at the workplace. I feel like something like that would have definitely offered a better sense of understanding of what exactly I was supposed to expect as a civil engineer. Because even growing as an employee at where I work right now, when I first started working here, I felt like there was a lot of things I did not know. And that was correct because I just started fresh as an employee there. That was like my entry-level job. They kind of just throw you in the deep end because, I'm sure you've heard it before, but everything you need to know at the job, you learn at the job. And that's true for higher education roles too. Because out of everything, experience beats hours or even years of studying. Once you've experienced something firsthand, like conducting plan checks or conducting engineering analysis for specific purposes within your workplace, that beats all of the theoretical things. Because with the theoretical, I feel like there's always that factor of you being uncertain if this truly is correct, because you don't have that aspect of visualizing of what exactly you're calculating or what exactly you're solving for. I've had people describe to me what they did as an engineer before I became an engineer, and like I said, it was so, hard to visualize and understand where they're coming from because I myself didn't experience any of the things that they were saying. If you have a relative or a friend who's in a career field that you are interested in pursuing, my advice would be to sit down with them on their free time and just ask them examples of projects that they're doing, including any reports or drawings and what exactly they have to analyze or draw or file to help you get a better understanding of what to expect. That is, of course, if they're allowed to do that and, all of that's legal. Like just saying some of that might be confidential. But of course, that's under you and their discretion. But more often than not, a lot of careers are either over-glorified or not thoroughly explained. It's either different ends of the spectrum. And just getting a better understanding would really help in choosing the correct career path for you. And also, I want to talk about this subject as well, because I'm driving right now, and I just passed a billboard advertising for a UC. I wanted to talk about the differences between CSUs and UCs. Growing up, I was told that a UC was far superior than a CSU, but that in itself is a oversimplification, at least from what I've actually seen. So, CSU does stand for California State University, and UC stands for University of California. The difference being is that UCs are seen as a higher caliber of education as opposed to CSUs. And because of that, that clout or that status of being in a UC, UCs are more often than not, are always way more expensive than CSUs. These UCs tend to have bigger classroom sizes. I'm talking factors of 10 times bigger than a CSU's class. And also, it's much, much more expensive. A UC student population is much, much bigger than that of a CSU's student population. Because UCs are seen as having a higher status and being more expensive, you'd think those that get into UCs would be more well prepared for the job as opposed to those that go to CSUs. And when I visited career fairs, transitioning from high school to college, visiting different colleges, that couldn't have been further from the truth. From what I've been told, CSUs are meant to prepare you to handle the workforce. Their emphasis is on practicality and using what you've learned in school in the day-to-day job. UCs are there for the theoretical. They teach you stuff far and beyond that of the practical needed for the work environment, maybe even helping you in pursuing higher studies or even research in what you're studying. And I learned that through asking different students at UCs and CSUs. Both of them agreed that CSUs were best for preparing you for handling a job right out of college. And me, with the end goal being finding an engineering job, It was a no-brainer for me to go to a CSU because it helped me prepare for a job as soon as possible, and it was cheaper, so I'd be saving so much on debt and student loans. And that was amazing because I basically graduated with no loans. Paid them off almost immediately. I feel like I would have been drinking the Kool-Aid too in going to a UC had I not learned that firsthand. Like, actively not searching up CSUs versus UCs, like, what exactly made UCs better. I probably would have fallen into the trap of thinking that, yeah, I'm going to go to a UC because it's seen as a higher status. Not knowing that I would have probably just been in more debt, and I'd probably still be paying off the debt right now if I did that. And let me tell you, where I work at has a combination of both UC students and CSUs. We all end up in the same place. So I really wish that that was more common knowledge and not just, used as a blanket term that UCs are far superior to that of a CSU. Because yes, in some regards they are. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be at the same place anyways, what's the point? Everyone has their own opinions and everyone has their own choices to make in life. Maybe the student life is much better at UC. Maybe there's more opportunities for socializing or like big parties, fraternities, sororities, whatever. Or maybe there's just more clubs in general or things to do around the area. But I just wanted to voice that the amount of money it takes to take a UC over a CSU is many times over than the other way around. It's just so much more. And I think for most college students, what they really need to look out for is really minimizing the amount of debt or money you're going to owe once you graduate. Because the interest rate on student loans and student debt is crazy. I forgot the number, but the United States is severely in debt as a general population. It's some crazy number. I think it's in like the millions or billions of dollars. It has people even asking, like, who do we even owe this money to? And while I haven't looked too much into it, it is a pretty serious problem. And it's scary to think about that a lot of people are taking that on without being fully well equipped and knowing with what they want to pursue or what they want to do in the future. So really, just look into the day-to-day life of people in the profession that you are looking to pursue, and not in the day-to-day life as a student pursuing that career. Because your day-to-day life as a student is very much so different than that of a worker. I've talked to a lot of my coworkers and different people about this, and I get varying different answers, right? But I wanted to voice my opinion on it. I 1000% love working over being a student. Maybe it's because pursuing an engineering degree was so hard, but I hated the fact that weekends were never mine. I always had to do projects or study for exams, finish up homework for that extra 1% cushion of grade. It was super annoying and it felt like my life was just not mine. I felt like I had so much responsibilities, but at the same time, it was never that big of a deal, because at the end of the day, they were just grades, right? But there was always that pestering feeling that, I need to get this done, I need to get this done, and it always bled into my weekend. My free time was virtually gone as an engineering student, but as someone working in the engineering field now, weekends are mine. I guess it varies from where you work, but I can just not think about work for the whole weekend, pause all my projects, and wait for the following Monday to proceed forward. Surprisingly, a lot of my coworkers and people I've talked to have said that they enjoyed being a student more than being a worker, mostly because they were really good at being a student or they were good at school in general, getting good grades and such. And while I feel bad for them and let them know that I'm sorry that they felt that way, because when they told me, honestly, they looked really depressed and like they hated being at the workplace that they were at, I couldn't be any more the exact opposite. I loved the fact that I had the weekends to myself, but not only just having the weekends to myself, but that I got paid for it. And pretty well too. And I'm not going to say that I'm rich or anything, but it's nice to know that I'm making money that is enough to provide for my current family, but also enough to save for my future family and my future self. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Do you like the current career that you're in? Or if you're still pursuing one, which one is it? And were you well informed before you made that decision? And were you well informed enough about that career path before you made that decision to choose that job? Let me know down in the comment section below. Alright, catch you guys later.